Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today. My name is Mona Ouri, and I am the founder of Woomentum. So for those who don't know Woomentum, I would like to briefly introduce about what we do. So we're an independent organization. Our mission is to help better the lives of women and their communities by enabling them to start and grow sustainable and profitable businesses. We run multiple projects in research, advocacy, and capacity building throughout Southeast Asia. Our project activities are in support of both SMEs and startups. As ecosystem builders, we actively engage with entrepreneurs, investors, donors, and policymakers. So before we get started, let me say that this event marks the launch of the second volume of our publication on how women-owned SMEs transform in this era of digitalization. So the 2 volumes of this publication cover 7 countries. And I will name them now for you because I would like you to get a sense of the research scope that we have been working on. So we started off with Myanmar, Indonesia, Cambodia, and Malaysia in phase 1 in 2020. And we then covered Vietnam, South Korea, and Singapore in 2021. All these countries have, of course, different levels in terms of digital maturity. And that's why we hope to foster cross-border learnings and dialogues by providing a platform such as the event today. So I am here with my colleague Rabia Bao, the country representative of CAS Japan. Hi, Rabia.
Hello.
Hi. So CAS Japan has been our supporter in this amazing journey for the past, since 2019, and we are, united. We have this united belief that digitalization is a key factor that can help women entrepreneurs successfully overcome gender-specific challenges in business and stay relevant, grow their businesses, and in turn, further empower their families, communities, and their societies as a whole. So we really value this partnership enormously because our collaboration has uniquely been at the intersection of gender equality, entrepreneurship, and digitalization, something I'm personally very, very passionate and excited about it. So if you are interested in any way to come aboard, as partners or supporters to join us in this journey with CAS, to bring more value to women entrepreneurs, please do not hesitate to contact us. Before I hand over to Rabia, who will be moderating our session today, I would like to briefly introduce her. I don't think I have enough time to mention all the amazing things you've done, Rabia, but probably briefly to mention that you've been working heavily in Asia for the past 2 decades. And you started your career as a spokeswoman of the Ministry of Interior in Germany. And you joined the European Commission to lead good governance and democracy at the EU delegation of Cambodia. You also worked a long time in Vietnam. And in 2016, you led the Department of Asia Pacific, covering over 23 offices from CAS HQ in Berlin. And you're currently leading and directing the regional program on economic governance in Asia. So with no further ado, I will now hand over to Rabia to moderate the panel. And I hope you get value out of this session and you enjoy your afternoon. Thank you. Over to you, Rabia.
Thank you so much, Mona, for this warm introduction. It's my pleasure and my office's pleasure to be here today and to host this session. We have worked so long to get here, and I think we have created an amazing product. So as you say, this is our 2nd year of collaboration. The 3rd year is already in planning. I will come back to this towards the end of our event today. This year marks a strong focus for promoting women in Asia for the Konrad-Adenauer Foundation in Japan and for our regional economic program. We have 3 simultaneous projects in South Asia, Japan, and Southeast Asia, and the core focus is women in businesses and in legislation as a target group, or the lawmakers. I am very honored to have the opportunity to discuss our latest achievement, and I like to sincerely congratulate you, Mona, and your amazing team of Woomentum for this publication of the final report covering, as you said, Vietnam, Singapore, and South Korea. I can only motivate our listeners to look at both publications. There is a lot of learning in it and a lot of recommendations we will discuss today. Indeed, we will look into the findings and introduce those to our larger audience. And on that note, I warmly welcome our participants out there. I have counted the countries. We have 21 countries on board. And I think this in itself is worthy to mention. I look forward to your engagement in the next hours, and we will try to answer your questions. Do make use of the Q&A box. Our experts are here to discuss your remarks with you and your questions, and in return we will involve you in 3 opinion polls over the course of this event. So this is a very interactive engagement, very interactive setting. Thank you very much, Mona, for staging this. Please actively participate in the opinion polls, because that helps us to better understand your point of views, or how organization and setup can be improved, and in what areas we should look further into. I will announce the polls after each subject of discussion, but now I like to introduce our panelists to you, and I am joined by your 3 leading experts of the country studies, and I like to start with Ms. Kuan. She is joining us from the Ministry of Planning and Investment, and since 2016, Ms. Nguyen Kuan, here she is, you see her, has helmed a career under the Vietnamese government to promote the national businesses and environment. She represents the public sector in working closely with SMEs to research, develop and implement initiatives, projects and programs to support their ventures. She was a member of the Minister's Task Force to develop and implement the Industrial Fourth Strategy for Vietnam, which is quite a milestone in establishing the National Innovation Center to promote innovation in Vietnam. We will likely hear more about that in the course of time. And currently, she coordinates a number of global partnerships projects for the Ministry of Planning. And those initiatives, I like to mention that, are operated through a gendered lens that aim to access policy environment for women SMEs to operate in and promote innovation through its approach to environmental sustainability. A long, impressive list. I like to get over to Mr. Kuan from the Asia Foundation. Mr. Kuan is a global expert in innovative business solutions to poverty, including public-private approaches to development and responsible business models. And he oversees the Asia Foundation's office in Korea, covering both South and North Korea. Previously, Kuan was the regional lead for the International Finance Corporation, the private sector arm of the World Bank Group, and its sustainable business advisory services in Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as other partners. And he took care of de-risking investment, impact investment, and mainstreaming environmental social governance in the investment processes. And last but not least, I like to call in picture and on board Dr. Ruben Ang from the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy from the National University of Singapore. He spent 16 years in government in consulting and in research, In government, he was the Prime Minister's office. He was in the Prime Minister's office driving evidence-based policy making through data analytics and Singapore's Smart Nation strategies. In consulting, Dr. Rubin co-built the advanced analytics practice at the top firm and implemented complex analytics capabilities across the industries. And currently he teaches a course on data analytics and behavior insights and policy innovation, as well as he works with senior executives in their organization's transformation strategies. And he also serves on the advisory boards of agencies in finance and homeland security. So you can see we have got our knowledgeable experts who help me and guide us through our panel discussion, where we will discuss the findings of the study that we are introducing today. So let us now dive into the panel session. I am asked to do the first opinion poll, and you will see this on screen. So please participate actively. This is a more general pre-discussion poll where we would like to find out what your background is and how you came across our path to success, helping women SME to grow and prosper. While this is going on, I'd like to concentrate on our three wonderful experts. Mona has already given us the outline of the project and our research focus. And I like to begin with general questions to all our panelists, so to speak, to set the pretext of our findings. Before we go into the digital transformation policy breakthroughs in each of the countries, we need to recognize that the extent to which SMEs can digitalize the businesses depends highly on the quality of existing infrastructure and acceptance of technology throughout the country. And allow me to draw some context from the master report before I come to your question. The extent to which digitalization has the potential to narrow the gender gap in businesses depends on the quality of existing infrastructure and acceptance of the technology throughout the country. In Vietnam, in Singapore, and in South Korea, the penetration of smartphones in 2021 is considered relatively high and similar between the three countries, with more than 96% of the population owning at least one device. The same cannot be said for the internet access, since Vietnam seems to lag behind with only 70% of its population having access to broadband connectivity. Now, having said this as a pretext, here's my question to you three. What is the role of the policymakers in creating a conducive environment for women-led SMEs to digitalize, and what types of foundational needs for digitalization transformation should be met by nationwide policies? So I like to start with Ms. Kuan, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rebecca. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me to join here so that I can share to you some information about the digital transformation in Vietnam, especially for the in the enterprise. As Mona and Rebecca had mentioned, that the digital transformation is the trend and very important for the business to grow. And we had some research about the digital transformation, especially for the SME, and we find out some gap of the digital transformation for the SME. First is the capacity gap when the SME when they want to do the digital transformation. So and the second gap is the market gap, because now in the market there are a lot of digital solution. So to find out which is the solution that's suitable with the SME is not easy. And the third gap is the financial gap for the SME. because the SME, they lack many resources, especially the financial resources. So and the digital transformation, when we conduct a survey for the more than 1,000 SME in Vietnam, the most nearly 60%, they see that the obstacle to do digital transformation is about the cost. The cost here is not only about the cost to cover the digital solution, but also the cost. So they had to training for the employee. They had to train their procedures and other costs for the digital transformation. And the third gap is the institution gap. That means Vietnam now we are in the phase of the digital transformation nationwide, and government we had to digitalize. And as Rebecca had mentioned, in Vietnam there are some infrastructure for the digital transformation is still limited compared to other countries. So that's the institution gap that we need to fulfill the fourth gap to promote the digital transformation for the SME in Vietnam. So based on that research, we had to on the earlier of 2021, ministry had implement a program to support the digital transformation for the enterprise, and my minister had for the KPI. The 4 KPI in the program. The first one is to raise the awareness and the capacity for the enterprise in Vietnam. And for the period from 2025, the 100% of enterprise in Vietnam have the knowledge and the awareness about the digital transformation. And the second KPI is the program will provide the support, including the technical support and the financial support to at least 100,000 enterprises in Vietnam. And the third KPI that the program will provide the intensive support for at least 100 companies in Vietnam to make it the successful case of digital transformation. And the fourth KPI, the fourth goal is we will build up a network of at least 100 experts of digital transformation for enterprise, because the expert is very important, because they are the people who will provide the support and to the enterprise. That's why we want to enhance the capacity of the expert in Vietnam also.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kuan. That was already a fantastic intro. I do like to briefly address this question also to our two other panelists. Ruben, please.
Thank you so much, Rabia. It's such an honor to be among distinguished panelists. So just a quick one. I think COVID-19 has shown that digitization and digital transformation, it's not a good to have, actually a must have, right? So I think we want to ride on this wave to do a few things. I think first of all, I was very taken by Ms. Kuan's point about some of the gaps in Vietnam and what the government has been doing so well. I just wanted to add some more implementation perspectives. I think you're absolutely right to say that as an SME, sometimes there are so many service providers, and it's very hard to think about who to get, right, what the quality is. So maybe that's where government could step in to consider accreditation of service providers for SMEs. I think this accreditation process will sort of provide a list of trusted service providers that some of these SMEs could go to. So that's one. I think the other thing also is for governments to consider digitization as a service. This could be, in partnership with some of these service providers, because at the end of the day, sometimes service providers would like to sell, the whole programs, but for finance and the solutions sometimes are one size fits all. But sometimes as an SME, I may need only one part of it. So instead of thinking about productizing the thing, we can think about digitization as a service, which governments could step in to offer. The other thing I'll just like to offer as an idea is that sometimes when we think of some of these solutions, we are quite siloed. For example, if it's digitization, we think about digitization. But if we think about some of our policy imperatives, it's also about sustainability, right? A green economy. So why not do think of bundles? So instead of just thinking about the digitization agenda, maybe also put in the message of sustainability. So it's not just digitization, but digitization and having a sustainable business. So it's sort of multiple ministries going to market together. I think will engender a more productive sort of policy process. And finally, just a point. Sometimes as policymakers, we take a very policymaker-centric perspective about thinking what's best for others, right? What's best for SMEs and so on. But maybe we should also want to consider co-creating some of these solutions so that the products that we create, the policies that we create are product of co-creation with some of these women SMEs, women-owned SMEs and SMEs as a whole. In doing that, I think we sharpen the products that we have for the needs of the SMEs, and then it also increases ownership. So some thoughts that I have.
Thank you very much. Very valid points. Over to you, Mr. Kuan. What is the role of the policymakers, and what do we need? What kind of foundations do we need to transform?
Sure, and thank you first of all to Woomentum and CAS for this opportunity, and congratulations for this really important and exciting work that you're doing in the region, and also with my fellow panelists. I'll just go over some very basic broad areas that I think my fellow panelists already covered most of it, but let me just add a few thoughts. I think one area is policy clarity. And in the case of Korea, I'll be talking a little bit about one form of digital innovation, financing innovation, which is P2P, people-to-people lending or crowdfunding. So that came because a lot of momentum was gaining from private providers of P2P. So there was a lot of activity, but there was not enough clarity and standardization. So I think one role is obviously policy clarity. Second is something much more in the soft areas of policy, such as sharing experiences. It's like what we're doing right now, but I think we do need to expand a lot of the role of each individual governments in sharing experiences. Korea, and not everything that Korea does is necessarily applicable to other countries. So that's going to be one of the areas of the government can play a role in terms of sharing experiences and knowledge sharing. And finally, people-to-people exchanges. I think those are often not frequently mentioned, but just right now because of COVID, it's difficult to do. But more of this needs to happen more at the regional level. We have an experience last year where with Cambodia, we had a virtual blended event where we gather a group of SMEs in Cambodia, support organization, intermediaries, the government on both sides, and we had very intense learning sessions in terms of what each countries are doing, and we had to come up with we gave a prize for best ideas. So it was a lot of fun, but also great way of networking even in the pandemic times. So those are some very initial ideas in terms of how do you really provide some basic infrastructure and foundations. I mean, I think a big area for us is the infrastructure for digital financing. So that's an area that I think that Korea can also share lessons.
Two very valid points. We will come back to the networking part and of course also to the digital financing. This is a very big part in our report. I like to now come to the first theme that we have chosen. Just for our listeners, we will discuss 3 thematic subjects now. We will first look into a little bit of the continuation of what we just started discussing, the nationwide digitalization roadmap of each of the chosen country, of the country studies. We will look in our second theme to improving the digital literacy of workforce. And last but not least, we try to look into the increased collaboration and partnerships between the ecosystem and stakeholders. So we come back definitely to the networking, to the benefits of the networking part. Now over to theme number 1, nationwide digitalization roadmap. I would like to hear from you. As the word leading nation in the digital readiness index, it is clear that the Singaporean government, Ruben, has been dedicating resources to enable and accelerate the digitalization of its economy. So just to name an example, the SME Go Digital program that was launched in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, by the IMDA, provides SMEs in different sectors with a step-by-step guide on the digital solutions to adopt and relevant trainings for their employees at different stages of their growth. So here's my question to you, Ruben. As someone who advised the IMDA for the Go Digital program, can you please share your learnings from the creation and implementation process of this program? What are some key considerations for the policymakers who are aiming to implement similar initiatives in their country? Ruben, thank you.
Thank you so much, Rabia, for the question. You know, on reflection on what Singapore has been doing in the last few years, you know, Singapore moves at a very fast pace. So sometimes when I look at the roadmap, it doesn't feel like a roadmap. It's actually almost like a flight map, right? Because we are always trying to take off. But you know, on reflection, I think just some fundamental points. So for those of us who may not be so familiar, the SME Go Digital program is a program started in Singapore to help and drive and accelerate digitization among the small medium enterprises in Singapore. I'll just make some couple of broad points. You know, at the end of the day, my thought is that policy is a blunt tool, but policy implementation cannot be blunt. It has to be as precise as possible, right? Because if we don't think about, if we sort of keep policy implementation as a blunt tool, it simply means that we are always thinking about one-size-fits-all approaches, and that cannot work, right? So that was the sort of philosophy behind the SME Go Digital. We wanted to think about, yes, the policy is to help SMEs go digital, but we need to understand that different SMEs are at different maturity points. So the question is, we need to understand which maturity points different SMEs are at so that we can take them to the next level. So the first thing that was done was actually a screening tool to help us understand which stage of the maturity point. There was sort of a 2x2 sort of quadrant to help in the diagnosis of what's the current state of each SMEs. And that's incredibly helpful because from a data perspective, as more SMEs completed the screening questions, we have a good lay of the land, how Singapore SMEs are with regard to digitization and where can we push them towards. From an individual SME perspective, it's incredibly helpful because it's almost a reflective tool to understand where they are at. So after they have completed that screening tool, they know where they are at, and they'll be given a bundle of recommendations to take them to the next level. So this is what we call a different stripes for different types approach. Okay, so that really combines more precise policy implementation. So I think one of the key learnings here is that there's a lot of diversity among our SMEs in different countries. So the key learning here is, let's not have a one-size-fits-all implementation approach. We need to think about screening first to understand what their current state, and then we give them appropriate bundles to take them to their desired state. The second point, maybe just in reflection of the learning, not just with Singapore, but I work with governments around the world in Africa as well as in Central Asia. So let me just share one point before I just conclude and hand it over. Sometimes when I work with governments around the world, sometimes with different ministries, the problem is presented as a digitization problem. But when I, when I actually discuss with some of the stakeholders in the organization, I realized that the digitization problem is just the tip of the iceberg. Let me give you an example. So I was working with this particular country in Central Asia, and they wanted to digitize their mining industry. So of course, it's presented as a digitization and data issue, right, as a project. But we realized that actually there are many hurdles to digitization of the mining industry in this particular country in Central Asia, and the reasons are cultural. So just to be quite frank, right, the reason why there's a lot of resistance to digitizing the mining industry is because of corruption. When we have digitization, it means that processes are more transparent, documents are more transparent. It's very hard to be corrupt, right? But corruption line the pockets of some of these senior people. So I just wanted to add a nuance to digitization and transformation. And that is to really, in your diagnostic tool, I think it's important to consider what lies below the digitization iceberg. Because what lies below the digitization iceberg could be cultural, it could be lack of senior management buy-in, it could be the lack of change management. So it's important to understand the whole package. If not, we'll just be solving issues at the tip of the iceberg without addressing a deeper point.
Thank you very much, Ruben. I like to stay on with you and the Singaporean example. You just enlightened us, and we discussed earlier that digital infrastructure plays a major role in how the SMEs digitalize. And in Singapore, we have seen many fintech solutions. You touched upon that already, and those gain momentum thanks to regulatory breakthroughs by the M&As. Could you please share with us about the digital banks in Singapore and the P2P lending? And then with that P2P, I like to directly dive to Kuan, who also touched upon this in his intro statement. Ruben.
Sure. Thank you for that important follow-up. So 2022 is going to be a very interesting year for Singapore because we are going to see an entry of six new digital banks, right? I think about 2 years ago, the Central Bank of Singapore gave out 6 licenses, and next year they'll all enter the fray. So I think, so recently some of the traditional banks were talking with me and wondering how they could differentiate themselves, right? Because some segments of their customers will definitely be lost to some of these more innovative digital banks. So I think that this is where there is an important opportunity for SMEs here. So my thought to some of the traditional banks is that you need to find out what exactly your value proposition is and carve out new maybe customer segments. So that's where we are in the process of trying to see whether some of these banks could co-create with SMEs to come up with solutions for them. Because to be quite honest with you, some of the SME solutions, banking solutions for SMEs in Singapore are not great, right? Some of them are very clunky. Some of them is not very user-centric. So I think therein lies an opportunity for banks to work with some of these SME associations to then co-create some of these solutions for them. And I think it's an option time to engage the SMEs, for SMEs to proactively reach out to some of these banks to really create solutions that are price competitive and really meet some of their needs. And I think it's also an option time to do some thought leadership around what digital banking and fintech solution means for SMEs, and what are some of the fundamental characteristics and what's the future.
Thank you very much, Ruben. Very much to the point. Now, Mr. Kuan, in 2019, the South Korean government enacted the Act on Online Investment-Linked Financing and User Protection. And in short, you just said it, the P2P Financing Act. We would like to hear a bit more about that. We also learned from the research that crowdfunding is gaining momentum in South Korea as well. So what is your take, Mr. Kuan, on the alternative digital financing future in the country? So we know that the Asia Foundation has recently partnered with a leading crowdfunding platform in the country to fund the SMEs. Could you please elaborate a bit further and share your learning about this with us? Thank you.
Thank you. The future is very dynamic. The present is dynamic, and the future will be very dynamic. The whole digital financing space in Korea, like many parts of the world, is a bit on steroids, but not a lot of place to land yet. There's so much competition. The banks are trying to digitize or die, and they're looking for ways to survive with the new digital financing, everything from DeFi, decentralized finance, to cryptos and so forth. So it's a very exciting and field to be, but not a lot of things are landing yet. So the one thing that has landed, and I would like to discuss a bit, is in the area of P2P finance or crowdfunding. As you mentioned, the 2019 law that was enacted and 2020 become enforced is that it allows a more clear rules and standardization, minimum capital requirements, and so forth of the P2P platforms. There are more than 30 registered, and a registration process to the government. So it has been more orderly and formalized in Korea, and this is very aligned with the level of digitization among the Korean consumers. Mobile, online platforms, all of this has been very much a norm for the day-to-day transactions and consumption. It's probably one of the highest wire societies, like Singapore and other Asian countries. So this digital finance expanded in many aspects of day-to-day lives, including Kakao Pay, Naver Pay. So a lot of these very popular platforms are offering digital banking and digital financing. So this is really expected to grow. The exciting areas for us as a foundation, the Asia Foundation, in the space of digital financing, is in the area of crowdfunding. Again, this is one area that is has become very clear, and in terms of rules and regulations. This also played an important role in providing access to finance to women entrepreneurs here in South Korea, in a way that is democratizing how fundraising is done, as well as this shared with women entrepreneurs. So crowdfunding is extremely popular in Korea, and this is not for only lending, but also for donation, for philanthropic projects, and making loans, loan investments like what we're doing, even making equity investments on promising early stage businesses. There's a company called WSMEs that's doing that. So here at the Asia Foundation, so we're taking advantage of this favorable environment for innovative digital financing, and it's giving them more opportunities to provide SMEs, especially women SMEs, to access finance. And this is a big problem. There's discrimination, structural problems, or it's just plainly the traditional funding source collateral requirement too small. So it is allowing us to focus on two groups. One is women, and the other ones are refugees. And so we're partnering with this crowdfunding company, where we put, for example, $25,000 of our own funding, and we raised almost $200,000 to benefit about 7 entrepreneurs, mostly affected by COVID-19. And these are people who will not be able to access finance from traditional sources. That's about 7 to 8 times leverage of our original funding. So that's a great way of leveraging donor funding with private actors. And these are easily scalable. And we're planning to launch a much bigger fund next year. So in many cases, the advantage is that when you have this type of crowdfunding ecosystem, this usually opens doors for further investments from other sources of finance to women. and helping them build a track record for financing. That becomes easier as an entry point for many of these businesses. So they were very also happy that this funding is unrestricted for the most part, that can be utilized for any reasonable purpose of business. Interestingly, out of the 7 women that we funded this year, and we have several more in the pipeline, only 2 of them knew about crowdfunding or considered about crowdfunding before. So there is a work to be done on the awareness front about development. Even though this is so, in a society where crowdfunding is so common, it's not generally thought about by the businesses. So I think let me stop here just to give a bit of a pause in terms of where we are.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kuan, for your enlightening information and statements. Ms. Kuan, good to have you back, I think. I would like to turn over to you. And of course, apart from the question of how the situation, the crowdfunding situation, the P2P situation is in Vietnam, I like to highlight a second aspect. Recently, the Vietnam Ministry of Planning and Investment announced a program to support digital transformation in enterprises and cooperatives and household businesses. How did the MPI, the Ministry of Planning, set the agenda for that program, and what are the goals and the objectives for the SME sector in particular? And let me ask in turn, what type of support can Vietnamese SMEs expect from the program? Apart from this, I would also like what I just said, maybe just 3 sentences of where the crowdfunding situation stands in Vietnam, a country that is heavily leaning on family businesses anyway.
Yeah,
Kuan.
thank you very much. First, I would like to come back with Robin, when you said that it's not about the digital solution, but there are many elements, many factors underlie the digital transformation for the enterprise. And I totally agree with your what you said, because during this year, after one year of implementation our program, we found that the digital solution is just sometimes it's just on the top. Many SME in Vietnam, they don't have the standardized procedures, and they need to standardize the procedure. They had to change the business procedure before they apply the digital solution. So that's why from our program, we provide the consultant. We send the consultant to the SME to support them. How first they need to change the awareness. They need to change about they need to raise the awareness about how they can digitalization their business. And after that, we go along with them to standardize the procedures. And we working with them for 1 or 2 months to build up the digital roadmap for the enterprise. After that, they will have a kind of master plan, and they understand that what kind of the technology they need to for the digital transformation. Some enterprise, when we go to talk with them, they think that one technology can solve every problem in the enterprise. They can make the procedure automate. They can this solution can have the employee can do more effective. But after we work with them, they had changed their mind. That they know how they can set the they know how to work with the digital solution providers. And they are more after that they are more confident to do the digital transformation in the enterprise. So this is this is one of our activity in the program, that we will support them to raise the awareness, and we go with them to provide the technical support for the SME in Vietnam. And one thing, our government, we also spend amount of budget to support the SME to buy or to buy the digital solution. the SME they had to lead the digital transformation from themselves. But the government, we the government in our program, we can provide us a small amount of the money of the budget of money to that means to just reduce the risk for the time when they apply to the digital solution. And besides, we conduct many training activity and the connection, the solution matching. As the Ruben had said before, there are a lot of solution provider in Vietnam also. We are build up the 3 digital package, like the start digital, grow digital, and the go digital, go global. In one package, there are 5 or 6 group of solution, and in this group of solution, we have review the digital solution provider, and they commit with the government that they will have some kind of the discount for the SME when they join to the package, and also the government will also support the technical support or the budget. The SME, when we apply to this package, they can decide themselves which solution provider that's suitable to the SME. But all this solution had to have been scanned by our program. So that is one of our activity.
Thank you very, very much, Kuan.
I'm sorry, because about the crowdfunding, I want to share with you a little bit about
briefly,
the crowdfunding.
Yes, very briefly, please.
Yes. Actually, 4 years ago, we had a result about the crowdfunding, and when we developed the law for the SME support, we postponed the crowdfunding mechanism for the SME. But at that time, it's quite early for Vietnam. I think this is quite early for Vietnam, and maybe there's some early. I mean, in terms of the culture of Vietnam, about the market size for the crowdfunding is not too big. And many risks can be raised can be if we implement the crowdfunding. So that time the government not passed the crowdfunding proposal. And I think now we come back to the crowdfunding result, and maybe this time it's more suitable for Vietnam for us to propose the crowdfunding, maybe in the sandbox mechanism.
That sounds certainly promising. Thank you very much for sliding that answer in. I know I am supposed to move on to our second theme, but I have received a wonderful question, and I firstly like to direct this to Mr. Kuan. How can alternative financing and digital banks help women entrepreneurs to democratize their access? In the end of the day, it is about more democracy for us. So please, Kuan, would you be able to attend to that question?
Sure, thank you for that important question. I think it's just the nature of explaining how the crowdfunding peer-to-peer investment process works is that our partner essentially, we do the due diligence we co-do the due diligence on the company, identify companies. We're working with local governments and chambers of commerce, identify the pipeline of companies. And then once identified a shortlist, we'll examine these companies together. And once we find the promising companies, the crowdfunding companies do a campaign to raise the money from individual investors. So individual citizen, you and I will go into the sites and look at the list of the companies and if you like it, invest. So it's a way of inviting the citizens to look at the opportunities to become individual investors. So that's a way of democratizing access to finance. And then once the fundraising targets are reached, we disperse the funding to the women entrepreneurs. So I think that's a very promising avenue to increase the number of investors in the system.
Thank you very much. I now move to, I'm time sensitive. We have more questions coming up now. Up to topic 2, improving the digital literacy of workforce. There is plenty discussion ahead for us. This is a very sensitive and very important subject as well. Along with the blueprint for digitalization of enterprises, it is equally important to have a digitally skilled workforce. I think we all agree on this. A workforce that is ready to adapt to new technologies, all of those that are arising and will come about partly due to COVID that expedited that process. The digital literacy of employees is a universal challenge. We hear this in Japan, I hear this in Europe. You will be able to talk about this as well. More than half of our women SMEs participants in our study cited that this is a key challenge to their business processes. Having said that, I like to call in our second opinion poll that will come about. Your answers will help us and lead us to more in-depth discussion in this very session. So here it comes, please participate. Meanwhile, I'll tend to back to Korea. The Korean SMEs have been facing chronic labor shortages and have difficulty attracting young high-skilled talents. And while the Korean government has stepped in with programs to offer short-term wage subsidies for SMEs in the need of skilled talents, the SMEs struggle to retain talent once the subsidy period ends. I think this is something that we see in many other countries too. Last year, however, the government of Korea announced a Digital New Deal, which is a comprehensive policy agenda to promote digital innovation and increase investment in human resources. So, Mr. Kuan, are there any initiatives under the Digital New Deal that can support SMEs to attract and retain skilled employees? And what other initiatives can Korean policymakers push to address that hurdle? We have, I think, half an hour to go, I think more than that. So be time sensitive as well. But of course, I like to hear your insights, so I do not cut you short yet. So please, Mr. Kuan, starting with Korea.
Thank you. The answer is yes.
Good.
But let me, before talking about Green New Deal, just a bit about the Korean SME environment. It's very tough. And I know that SMEs are having hard times everywhere, but it is, I mean, not only the data shows that, but also the real life I've seen. It is one that has the highest wage differentials between small and big countries, big companies in OECD. So the wage differential, there's a culture of not being glamorous, and it has a lot of hard time attracting talent, young talent especially. So it's a very tough environment in Korea to any SMEs. So in that context, the Green New Deal tries to address correctly some of these challenges that Korea faces. I'm not sure if really will be enough, probably not, and how they'll be implemented. But some of the ideas in the Green New Deal, which is a major package, economic package launched by the Moon administration, includes one, facilitating job matching between SMEs and young employees to equip with digital training. So there is a digital training component specifically, both to incentives to employ young employees, as well as short-term internships. So there is some component to do that. Second, there is a component to restructure job training systems, retraining to adapt to new digital era. There's a target of 180,000 individuals for future-oriented industries. There is a focus on the older workers as well, specifically focusing SMEs, training platforms for SMEs, and connecting it with the training centers. So that is, I think it does address the right areas in many areas, but again, it's a huge challenge. It's a structural problem beyond incentives because you have an industry structure where the large companies so dominate here in Korea that a lot of these challenges will see how much these are addressed. The Korean SMEs face a digital skills gap. And 72% of the workers in Korean micro businesses have low digital problem solving skills. This is one of the widest gaps in the OECD. So I'm just giving you this large challenge of data in here in Korea. So you can see this is a major challenge in Korea, and we don't have the answers. I think the Green Deal is a start, but let's see how we go from here. Oh,
thank you very much. We have already questions coming to this very point, which I will save for later. I like to move on to Vietnam. In recent years, the Vietnamese government has prioritized and made astounding progress towards digitalization. I have witnessed the start when I was still there, but this is nothing in comparison what is happening now. There have been a few policies in place to address the digital skills development gap, but at the same time, the Vietnamese workforce has indicated a strong desire to be digitally savvy. So the Pricewaterhouse-21 Vietnam Digital Readiness Report found that 84% of the respondents would learn new skills or completely retain to improve future employability. Now, Kuan, what kind of framework can the government put into place to meet these upskilling demand of SME workforce? And are there specific digital skills that need to be prioritized at the current early stages?
Yeah, thank you very much, Rabea. We aware that the digital skill of the SME employees is becoming very important. And also the training in the SME is also the key pillar of the program, of our program, and also our supporting activity of our ministry in this period. So actually, we have learned a lot from the Korean and the Singapore approach to design the training program for the SME in Vietnam. And under our program, we will have the two training program. One is for the SME level, management level, and the second is we will conduct the training for the IT, IT manager of the SME. Because the IT manager is also the important department when to implement the digital transformation for the SME. And we devise the training program for the basic level and to the in-depth level with a lot of the topic that along with the procedures, the business management of the company. And also we and at that time we had developed the partnership with many organizations, both from the university and the international expert, international university, and also the technology company to design the curriculum and design the training program for the SME in Vietnam. And actually, we have the two types of the training. First is the mass training for the basic level, and the second, the in-depth training is it's a long term and the long days, maybe in the 7 days training, and we can go to the SME to conduct the training on site to the SME. And this year we design about the master plan of the training, and we will expand the training cost in the next years.
Thank you very much. To go in the very same direction, something is wrong with my tone. Can you hear me okay? Good. So, to go in the same direction, over the years, Singapore, Ruben, this is your call, has implemented programs such as the Skills Future program to specifically enhance SMEs to upskill their workforce. Skill development and talent attraction programs are also offered by the Enterprise Singapore. Yet, our findings suggest that women SMEs are underutilizing such programs to upscale their employees. What kind of initiatives should be considered to better reach and incentivize the women SMEs to take advantage of the manifold existing opportunities that Singapore offers, unlike like we heard in Vietnam, for example? And furthermore, what next steps should policymakers consider to expand upon the current offerings, like, for example, the continuous learning programs?
Thank you so much for the important question. What you just highlighted is just a learning point. It's an example of how a good policy needs good implementation. Because if not, then we have a good policy, but then the uptake and utilization is slow. So the issue here is more policy implementation. So against that background, I think just as a background to what the Skills Future does is we want to encourage lifelong learning and professional upskilling all the time, right? Because the economy changes and new skills are needed. So a couple of years ago, the government gave 500 Singapore dollars, about $350 to every Singapore citizen and permanent resident to upskill professionally. And I think last year they added another $500. So it's a more individual perspective if they want to upskill. But that Skills Future program has gone to more the company level, where instead of giving individuals money, they're also thinking of giving a bundled funding for enterprises to spend on training for digitization and skills for their employees. So that's just a background. But actually, one of the key issues we are finding is this gulf or gap between training and application. I call that the Friday-Monday chasm. So what do I mean by that? Friday, I go for training, the whole week of training, and I'm very fired up. But next Monday, when I get back to my desk, or if I work remotely at home, I wonder, how do I actually apply what I've learned, right? So there's a gulf, I call that, there's a gulf between training and application. That's one of the key issues we are seeing. And that's not very good because it decreases the ROI, or return on investment on training, if it's not applied properly. So what we are doing now is that we are pairing training with data literacy labs or data innovation lab, right? So what it simply means is that, so in the past, we used to call this, when we first started, data literacy lab, right? We tried to start it in different countries. And there's a big pushback because if you say data literacy lab, are you saying that my people are illiterate, right? Sometimes people are very sensitive. So now we don't call it data literacy lab anymore. We call it data innovation lab. So sometimes the framing of it is quite important. So what happens is that during the training process, skills are learned, ideas, we get some of the people in this training programs to come up with ideas on how the skills, the things that you learn, could be implemented into a project. So the training ends with a project proposal. Then, we receive a lot of project proposals. Some of them will be selected to go through this data innovation program, where we guide them and mentor them across 3 to 6 months to create a prototype, leveraging on what they have learned. And this is important because, number one, it helps crystallize learning. Number two, some of the employees who have gone through this program can become trainers for their organization. So the trainer is important. You cannot always rely on external trainers. And then, certain companies have a prototype. So this, the philosophy of this is really to increase the ROI, or return on investment, of the training monies that we are investing at the start, because all these are taxpayers' money. So we need to think about what's the multiplier effect behind that. So tied to this, this is a fresh idea that we are thinking of, to come up with something called the continuing digital education, just to continue some of these things. So it's not a one-off. This idea came from my work with medical doctors as well as lawyers, because medical doctors is very interesting because after their training, every year to be certified, they need to go for continuing medical education, right? CMEs. Then they'll get credits by attending talks and learning new stuff, and then they get accredited. So we are trying to see whether we can apply this idea to almost every industry, and one of them is digitization. So we are thinking, after they go through some of these digitization programs, every year we would provide a certain amount of training, talks, training, so that they can chalk up a number of credits to still be accredited in a way. So this continuing digital education approach is something that we're thinking about for certification. The third thing I just wanted to highlight really quickly is that the National University of Singapore is actually trying to creatively come up with these work-study programs, because we realize that after 4 years or 3 years of undergraduate education, there's still a lack of application. When they go to companies, they still have to go through on-the-job training. So now what NUS is doing, or universities as a whole in Singapore is doing, is to work with some of these companies to co-create that degree program. And that degree program means that you take some credits in the university, you work, you apply, and some of the projects you do have one supervisor from the company and one supervisor from the university. I think this is where higher education seems to be going, and I'm very heartened by it's almost like an apprenticeship model. So these are some things that Singapore is doing, and other countries. And in fact, we are learning a lot from Germany and the European countries who have done this apprenticeship program. That's probably the way to go moving forward.
That is true. Hadn't thought about that one. We have a leading example here. Which is also a model for Vietnam, if I recall that correctly. I have, before I move on to the next theme, I have picked out a question that I do like to ask all three of you. Is there any, because it may help to all the problems that we have just discussed and encountered, is there any food of thought for the creation of women think tank to promote the digital transformation and the innovation? And this question is coming from Cambodia, from one of our listeners. So this is a little bit of, I see Mona smiling, a little bit into her direction. Nonetheless, I like to ask our three experts. This touches a bit about networking and a little bit about enhanced learning. So Ruben, Singapore think tank to promote women on digital transformation, a place they can all go to.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that important question. I think absolutely this is a great idea and the way to go. Because at the end of the day, we want to harness diversity, right? I think the reason, in my simple mind, the reason why sometimes AI models, artificial intelligence models are biased is because the team is not diverse. If you have a diverse team, I think it will decrease bias. Similarly, I think it's really important to, because some of the thought leadership are not led by women sometimes, right? It's not just women. We also want to think about generations. Sometimes a certain generation is not tapped upon. So maybe older women, for example, who have just retired from the workforce, may be very interested to build companies, right? We call this silver entrepreneurship. So creating jobs, right, for the economy and increasing labor penetration and things like that. So I think that there is a scope for a lot of things like this. And I think in doing this, we let some of the voices to be heard and package them as thought leadership. And I think with harnessing the diversity like this, I think society becomes stronger. We get more diverse ideas to cater to diverse groups.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kuan, women think tanks in Vietnam. I can see them already in Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi.
Yeah,
please.
Yeah, I think now the women SME is one of the priority to support in Vietnam. Even in our the law to the law on SME supporting, we also put the one article on the women SME. The women SME will have more priority when they assess with the support activity of the government. And now in Vietnam, in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh, we have a lot of the organization to support the women SME. And we also will working very closely with them. For example, now in another project and under the AED, we coordinate with the UNDP in Vietnam to implement the project the project named the IC COVID to support the social impact enterprise and including the women SME to overcome the COVID area. And we see we had a lot of the opinion from the women SME. They expressed that the digital transformation is the very good tool to help them to overcome the many obstacles of the women SME in Vietnam.
Brilliant, thank you. Mr. Kuan, Korea, think tanks, women networking.
That's a really interesting question. I mean, the combination of women, think tank, innovation, digital financing, I don't think it exists, or at least there's no clear leader that I could point to. There are different components to it. My proposal to the Korean government is to grant Mona Korean citizenship so that she can set up something here. So that could be one specific. But I think these are wonderful. That's a wonderful question. I mean, how can we really gather knowledge? We have pieces of it. I mean, in terms of our research, we know the Women Venture Association have their own research, the local governments. There's all scattered, but I think we do need, not only in Korea, but even regionally, we did some collaboration with the ADB on case studies of women entrepreneurs in Asia, but it didn't focus on digital financing. But I think, I think this is a gap that is needed, not only in Korea, but also at the regional level.
Thank you very much. We have noted the point, Mona, right? We have another project yet to go. So this is something that we certainly have to take up. I would like to move to theme 3 now, increased collaboration and partnerships between the ecosystem. Before I do so, Mona, I don't know if the opinion poll results have been shown on screen. If we had a chance to see, because this was very much linked to what we just discussed. Here we go. Who's most responsible? The government. Okay. We figured that, so that we are on the right place to discuss the policy recommendation for the governments here. Point well taken. So now to increase collaboration and partnerships between the ecosystems of stakeholders. All the current and future policies we have discussed today require extensive work in problem analysis and agenda setting and implementation planning and advocacy and awareness raising, all of that language. At all points of the policy formulation and implementation process, it is important that policymakers leverage knowledge and resources of stakeholders in the SMEs ecosystem. For example, in Vietnam, Ms. Kuan, there are many international development institutions, you named already plenty, and NGOs such as USAID. The Konrad-Adenauer Foundation is one of them, that play a prominent role in helping SMEs digitalize and even offer targeted support to women entrepreneurs. So here's my question to you, Kuan. How can policymakers in Vietnam leverage resources and learnings from support programs offered by such organizations? And what additional role can they play in supporting the digital agendas of the Vietnamese government? Floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much for your interesting question. Actually, every year in Vietnam, we organize a kind of Vietnam Development Partnership Forum. to on the development agenda of Vietnam have been discussed with the international organization and the donors there, and we review the ODA project, which Vietnam priority in this period. So we discussed very closely with the international organization and donors to how to support Vietnam to fulfill our goals and agenda. So I think the supporting organization, international organization, play a very important roles. They will support Vietnam not only about the budget, not only about the financial, but also they share many knowledge and the experience, international experts, and come to Vietnam. So I think yes, they're very important role.
Thank you very much. I can second that. We do feel very embraced in Vietnam and appreciate the cooperation and the sphere of the cooperation, which isn't everywhere that case in Southeast Asia to that extent. I like to give me that keyword, feeling welcome as foreign entity. I like to head over to Singapore. Across the 7 Asian countries that we have studied so far, we have noticed that formal business networks and association and informal business communities on social media play a key role in disseminating information to women SMEs. For example, in Singapore, 85% of the women SMEs participant interviewed in our studies were part of a general or industry-specific business association or a network group. Here's my question to you, Ruben. How can policymakers partner with and leverage such business networks, associations, and informal communities to raise awareness of new and existing support programs for the target women SMEs?
Yeah, thank you so much for the important question. I think this goes to the heart of policy implementation and policy communications. I think we can do a lot better. I think when it comes to some of the areas of implementation and communications, because I think we have good policies, but sometimes utilization is not as high and the awareness is not there. So if we think about increasing policy awareness for schemes and programs like this, I think one approach is to take a more sectorial approach. So looking at maybe manufacturing, looking at maybe education and so on. So I think a sectoral approach reaches out to, I guess, different specialties, people with different interests. And I think there we could even think about more interesting partnerships that are sectorally different. So I think that's number one. Number two, I think when we think about women entrepreneurs, they are not all the same, right? You have people who are young, you have also people who are much older. I alluded to just now, we are seeing a trend, what we call silver entrepreneurship, where people are retiring from the workforce and starting up their own businesses. And these businesses could be a variety. It could be they set up hairdressing salon. It could be a baking business, or it could be I know a women entrepreneur who's setting up a whole caregiving ecosystem, right? Because the dots are not connected. So what this means is that I think the awareness for these programs and networks, sometimes we need to think about different ways of communicating this. So for example, some of the younger ones, the way we then communicate to them probably got to be via TikTok, because that's where they hang out, right? So I think we sort of need a social media strategy as well, to think about reaching some of these people of different age groups. The other consideration also, some of the women entrepreneurs here are very active in some of their own ethnic and cultural groups, such as the Chinese Association or the Muslim Association. I think it's not, so we cannot just look at the chambers of commerce, but sometimes I think we also need to reach a broader base. We need to look at some of these cultural groups as well. So I think if we take this 3-pronged approach, I think that the awareness of these programs and utilization was significantly increased.
Thank you very much. Now over to Korea. Mr. Kuan, as a Korea country representative of the Asia Foundation, you have had a lot of experience with public-private and G2G, government-to-government partnerships. One of our research focus pillar was to study how digitalization can empower this. Are there any opportunities for mutually beneficial G2G partnerships that the Korean government can craft to help women SMEs leverage global resources for upskilling, networking, or mentoring?
Sure. I'm not aware of all the G2G initiatives in Korea, but so this perspective is for me, it's somewhat limited, but let me offer some thoughts about that. One of the greatest areas that I think every country needs to be well grounded of it is regulatory aspects of it. So I think having a better understanding of the regulations that might affect women SMEs, financing and innovation, digital financing. I think that type of stock taking, and sharing of information is really important. And I think the Woomentum's report, it's a good start in that direction, but I think much more needs to be done. On the Korea side, and this is one key area, as I mentioned earlier in my opening, that knowledge sharing aspect, this is an area that Korea can play a role. Not as a country that has all the answers. And a lot of the things that Korea is doing is probably not appropriate to most of the countries. But I think to stimulate thoughts, debate, discussion, and also and there are things that can be useful. So I think it's the sharing lessons such as the P2P Act, because it is one of its kind. And so I think that could be a start. And an experience, how that's been adopted, what are the challenges, and so forth. So, and second is in the area of knowledge sharing is in the area of infrastructure for digital financing, including broadband access. This is an area that I think Korea has, is very advanced and can be useful to other countries. At the Asia Foundation level, we have a program called with Google called Go Digital ASEAN. And that's something that we are working with the ASEAN committee and so there's a public-private, not just G2G, but that's an area that we are actively engaged. We're engaged with the chambers of commerce and private sector partners to provide training for SMEs with a particular focus on gender and women. So those are some thoughts. Yes, my focus is really on the knowledge sharing aspect. I'll encourage to move forward.
Thank you so much. As you can see, time is flying, and I would like to close here with our 3 themes, not the event yet, don't get me wrong. Mona did ask me to sort of pick out the key points. Given the time restraint I have, I think we can boil it all down to the following key words, which is education, networking, regional networking, needs assessment for the SMEs, and the cross-cooperation for government. I think this nails it where we need to look at in our consecutive studies. But now I like to take the remaining few minutes for maybe 1 or 2 more questions, if you can provide me with to-the-point short answers. And here is one to Mr. Kuan. You spoke about raising awareness. How, in your opinion, can we raise awareness of alternative financing to women entrepreneurs? 3 keywords.
By doing it, we need to expand our programs of crowdfunding, and so that the crowdfunding partners, they are the best ones. They do our campaigns and doing it. That's probably the best, and people seeing that it's successful and having good experience with it.
Wonderful. I guess this is our last one. How can women SMEs successfully design the business innovation during its COVID-19 crisis? Large one. Ruben, would you like to go? And then I'll head over to Kuan for her thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's just to borrow what Kuan mentioned. It is to just start, right? We just have to start. It's really a stepping stone approach because it's in doing that we learn and we get better. So I think it's just to jumpstart. And I think and progress is not linear, right? Sometimes you do it for digitization. Sometimes you move one step forward, two steps behind. But I think if we keep at it, we will see an exponential benefit to the business.
Thank you very much. Before I head to Kuan, over opinion poll number 3, please. We have a few more minutes to go, and we'd like to pick up your opinion in our third poll on the overall assessment. Thank you. Kuan, floor is yours.
Actually, I have the same idea with Wang and Ruben. I think we just learn, take action, and we adjust.
Thank you. Okay, last one. What is needed to make sure the SMEs are not only digitizing, but also doing so with the attention to digital and cyber security? This is a huge factor, especially in Europe. This is why we're not advanced yet, because we need the regulatory provisions for this. Your thoughts on cybersecurity? Kuan, you go first.
It's a major issue. So I don't know how I can say in the short words, but I also see it as an opportunity. But same as COVID, it's a threat, but it's an opportunity to create productive tension among policymakers to really solidify this field.
Yes, I fully agree. Ruben, I know it has been a big discussion in Singapore over the past years, and you are so advanced. So please, cybersecurity Singapore.
Sure. I mean, Singapore has still a lot to learn from everyone. I think cybersecurity or data security, unfortunately, has always been an afterthought in the digitization process. I think what we need to do is really to move it as a top of mind thing at the start and not as an afterthought. Facebook, for example, has one of the key values or mantras, right? Done is better than perfect. What it simply means is that let's rush to come up with a minimum viable product. So the rush to come up with a minimum viable product doesn't really consider security. They're just trying to complete it, right? And that seems to be the tech cycle, the agile cycle. But I think we need to take a step back to think that we need to complete it, complete a minimum viable product securely. I think that's the critical point.
Thank you. Vietnam, cybersecurity in Vietnam.
Yeah, we also consider the cybersecurity is one of the difficulty and obstacle for the digital transformation for SME.
Yeah, I think there is, this is a whole large new subject, and we in KS, we have done a few studies, especially in Singapore, on how to deal with this issue when it comes to digitalization, to open up private financing and all of this. I think I have to let you go now. The questions are pouring in. I keep looking at them, but our time is unfortunately up, which actually tells me that we had people listening to us, we had caught people's attention, and we had brought the right study on the road, which also motivates me, I'm looking at Mona now, that we continue our wonderful partnership. And we have already so many ideas in mind, but we are in the planning of yet another collaboration with Woomentum. We have to cover Asia, and we have only done our parts. So do expect so much more from us. This has been a really, really good partnership. I'd like to thank you, especially. I'd like to thank our experts here, my panelists, Mr. Kuan from the Asia Foundation, Ruben from the NUS, and Kuan from the Ministry of Planning. Thank you so much for spending your time with us, for rushing us, helping me to rush you through. through our publication. Thank you, dear audience, for posting so many interesting questions. Do read our publication. Keep on following Woomentum and KS Japan on LinkedIn, and of course, follow our experts. Thank you so much. I hope you all had an interesting afternoon. I would like to dismiss you all with best wishes for our holiday season, and of course, for a happy, healthy New Year. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.